want to be thank you, but want to be respectful of everyone's time. So my name is Julian Goresko. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Johns Hopkins University in our Office of Sustainability, and really happy to host, along with my colleagues today, our Campus as a Living Lab information session. So this program has been in development for the past couple of years now, starting with our Sustainability Leadership Council for the institution, and we're hosting this today for those of you who are interested in learning more about the program, either because you're considering applying for a grant, and you want to learn more about the program conceptually, et cetera. And so we're looking forward to answering your questions. Just in terms of format and flow, we are going to, talk to you a bit about just the framing of this program in the context of the university's climate and sustainability plan aspirations, sort of program mission and resources and grant guidelines, a little bit of project example overview, and then time for Q&A. You'll see that we have a Q&A and chat at the bottom of the screen, and the Q&A button is really what you want to use when we get to that portion. We're going to try and answer as many questions as we can sort of naturally throughout the program material as we go. So I'd probably encourage you to hold most of your questions till that point in hopes that we can address it. We'll try and make this as informative and useful as possible to everyone. So with that in mind, I'm going to jump into the material, and we'll introduce our team along the way at various points as we cover today's agenda. So some of you are probably familiar that over the past couple of years now, the university has been developing a climate action and sustainability plan, which was published in draft form in the fall of this past year. This has been developed in consultation with stakeholders across the institution and externally within the Baltimore region, and resulted in 5 overarching sections and sort of 9 unique goals at the moment. The plan focuses on both research, teaching, and scholarship, and sort of leads with this, which is unique for a lot of institutions within higher education, to sort of acknowledge that within our sustainability framework, our aspirations go beyond our operations in the built environment. And that's been an intentional part of our process, and I think a really part of the connective tissue for this program. So, this first section focuses on accelerating cross-disciplinary collaboration for planetary health and environmental justice locally and globally. The second section of the plan focuses on climate action in both areas of mitigating greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to climate change, and focusing on resiliency within our campuses and communities. The third section focuses on the built and natural environment, both our buildings and how they're planned, designed, and operated, as well as landscapes and grounds and the natural environment around designing and management of grounds and the connection to biodiversity, health, and community. The fourth area focuses on responsible consumption through the lens of pathways to zero waste, food systems, and upstream procurement, and then lastly, mobility and transportation, and really focusing on increasing use of multimodal sustainability transportation to reduce emissions and improve health and well-being. The plan's anchored around a vision for advancing healthy, just, and sustainable environments in our communities and around the world. And there are 7 guiding principles which really underpin the framework for the institution that cut across all 5 of these areas. And this is around Hopkins identity and innovation and discovery. Again, a cornerstone of what the Campus as a Living Lab program is really anchored around. Urgency for climate action, community partnership, justice and equity, environmental stewardship, just sort of the holistic stewarding of resources in a responsible manner, protecting health, and then accountability and impact, which is really meant to, I think, encompass the triple bottom line of ensuring we're thinking about these issues through the lens of people, planet, and economic resources. So coming to the program and what brings you all here today, throughout the country, really within higher education, Campus as a Living Lab programs have been developed to bring together university researchers, scholars, instructors, students with campus professionals to really use the physical university as a learning tool to leverage our campuses as an asset for learning, and to really embody that through projects that help advance institutional priorities. And so that for those of us spending time on campuses on a day-to-day basis, there's a palpable sense of sort of collaborative sustainability innovation that's occurring. Again, the program is developed by an interdisciplinary working group of the Sustainability Leadership Council, which was formed in 2019. It's really meant to advise senior leadership in the provost office and beyond around Hopkins' role in advancing sustainability as an institution. So, this program is meant to help us advance our new plan priorities. And that's a thing you'll hear us talk about a lot today. We recognize that across our schools and divisions, there's an enormous amount of research, scholarship, and instruction that's taking place. And for the purposes of the intersection of this program, the vision is really one that will foster projects that use the campus as a physical learning tool, that enhance our research and academic missions, but also contribute to institutional progress in some of the priorities that have been developed through our planning work. And so when you read the Climate Action Sustainability Plan for the university, it's meant to be holistic and broad and in no way limiting. And our hope as a team is that everyone can see pieces of their research within that. And in a lot of ways, I think, for those of you that are considering projects, the question I think becomes, how can the project be framed in a way so that it is illustrative and additive and informative to campus decision makers to really help inform how we make progress towards these ambitious goals and priorities. So with that in mind, I'd like to pass it to my colleague, Ben, who's going to talk a little bit more from the faculty and research perspective.
Great. Thanks so much, Julian. Thanks, everyone, for attending the webinar today. We can go ahead to the next slide. Excellent. And so, in thinking about the Campus Living Lab program, and I think, it's probably speaking to a lot of your motivations in coming today, we really want to think about in the context of the university's mandate, right? In what makes it important to be working on sustainability and climate issues here at Johns Hopkins. The motivation for the Campus Living Lab program is really to bring together several of our missions. And so obviously research, also tying to education, which is why it's important as we get into the details of this program to recognize that not only is education integrated as it always is in our research, but that we have specific course development and student-led opportunities here, so as to bring students into that research track. And also this question of service, right? So not only how a campus's lab project might directly impact operations at Johns Hopkins, but also how we can use our operations because we're a massive institution, right? And how do we use that as a test bed to bring some of the perhaps basic science innovations that come out of our research world into reality. On to the next slide, please. And so when we think about this in the context of the plan, I think Julian already just introduced that quite well. Want to point out that the sustainability plan, consistent with really, I think, our understanding across the institution, has centered on research, teaching, and academics as the first set of goals. And why is that? It's because when we began this process of sustainability planning, we heard from the Johns Hopkins community that this was really central, and this is how the university has a broader impact. Yes, we have a large physical footprint that we need to improve, and also our mission is to advance knowledge in a way that's going to bring this beyond. So we want this to be central. And associated with this, the launch of the Campus Lab program kind of directly came from the Sustainability Leadership Council. So the SLC, as I hope most people are aware here, is our university-wide organizing framework for collaborating on operations, research, academics, outreach, community engagement, policy, all things related to sustainability, climate, and other environmental issues. And it has a research and academics committee that was kind of the incubator for this concept of the Campuses Lab. And so in doing that, it was SLC responding to the needs for the priorities we already mentioned, both in Julian's remarks and what I just said about the sustainability plan. It also means the SLC is to be deeply involved in this. These projects, as you might have already done your internal calculation on yourself, are not simple, right? For many of us, it requires that we interact with members of the university community that we maybe don't have existing relationships with. It forces us to think about ideas we have in the context of actual operations. Again, I'm speaking from my perspective on the academic side. People coming to this from the operation side probably have the complementary challenge, right? And it's a big challenge, it's an important challenge. And so we really want to make sure that we help people make that connection. So the big ask to those who propose this program is to take that on. I think one of the big services of the program is to facilitate those relationships, because if we can help people applying for these seed grants get this going at this scale, that can really hopefully contribute to long-term impact of one's work. Next slide. And so as we actually get moving here, so the way that the program is set up, as hopefully you've seen, is that there is this required first stage application or letter of intent, right? And that allows us to really begin this matchmaking process in earnest. So we absolutely encourage you in that expression of interest. If you have a lot of details, great. The more detail, the better. If you don't, if you just have an aspiration, that's great too, right? Because what we want to be able to do is make sure that people who have these kinds of aspirations get the connections they need to put in a successful proposal by the deadline later in the spring. And so to do that, once you initiate the process by submitting a expression of interest, you can also reach out informally, but that expression of interest will be the formal process that we use to do this. We will then be able to build networks, both through our great team, the Campus Living Lab program, who's been developing this over the last couple of years and knows something about both the operational and academic sides of the house. We have the Sustainability Symposium coming up on April 3rd, which will be a great opportunity where we're going to be convening people from across, again, operations, management, and academics at the university. So it's a good place to learn about what's going on and meet new people. And also, if you've expressed interest by that point, to allow the team to introduce you to people there. There's also a tremendous wealth of information on the sustainability website. And so I would encourage you to explore that in general to understand what's going on at the university in terms of its operational sustainability activities, what the relevant people, relevant offices are on that operational side, as well as what the goals are going forward. And one of the resources that you'll find on the website is the Sustainability Research Directory, which was a tremendous effort by the Office of Sustainability and the SLC that is perhaps underutilized, but it's a way to find out, particularly on the academic side, who's doing what on campus. And not only should you explore that to find partners, if you go there and find that you're not in there, but you should be, then let's get you onto that directory to increase networking. Next slide. Great. And so there are three categories of funding here. And we'll get to, with the remainder of the time, I'm sure we'll be able to address questions on this. These are all explained in a slightly more detail in the RFP. The research proposals, those are, your more conventional seed grants within the parameters of a campus lab project. I want to emphasize that the researcher grants can be led by faculty and research scientists and also by postdoctoral fellows. Okay, so this is something that was important to us to tap into that tremendous energy at the postdoctoral level. And also, if you are a postdoc or if you're someone supervising a postdoc, this is an opportunity for that postdoctoral fellow to be a principal investigator on a project, right? Which, as we all know, is rare at the university and very important for professional development. So really want to encourage folks to think in those terms. The instructor grants are, as you might expect, to aid in course development, not necessarily new courses, but to be putting applied sustainability into the classes using the Campus Lab model. And then we have these student grants for student-led projects for students of all rank, and obviously a little bit smaller there, but in order to be able to feed some student funding. Let's see a question in the chat for staff funding. Let's get to, I was going to answer that quickly, but let's wait because I'm not exactly sure in what context that means. And so we'll come back to that. Thanks for the question. Great. And so the grant criteria, Julie, am I speaking over something I'm supposed to hand off, or is this still me?
If you could speak to this, Ben, that's great. Or if you'd like a member of our team too, just let us know. No worries either way.
Yeah, I apologize. I forgot. I knew where I entered. I forgot where I exited. Great. So there's a grant criteria. So you can see them listed here. I don't necessarily need to read them out for you. I want to emphasize that middle box, right? That we really do want to be testing innovative solutions. Now, what do we mean by testing? That's quite large, right? Doesn't mean you have to literally be doing a laboratory test, certainly. But we really want to be connecting the research to the solutions, right? And so that can be true for research. It would also be true, of course, in the teaching context as well. And then I will also just note that last box on the right that we want something that can scale. And that doesn't mean it has to solve climate change writ large, but it's something that informs an effort that then could at least be scaled locally beyond just the demonstration itself. And now I hand off. Stacy, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. My name's Stacy, and I am the Sustainability Fellow within the Office of Sustainability, and I work closely with Thunby, who is the program manager, specifically on the Campus as a Living Lab. Just next slide. Thanks, Julian. So we're going to talk about applicant eligibility here. And for the 3 different types of grant types, we have researcher, so faculty, tenure track, non-tenure track, and assistant and associate professors, along with research scientists and postdoc fellows are eligible to apply for the researcher grant. For the instructor grant, we are allowing faculty, student or staff course instructors, along with PhD instructors or adjunct instructors, meaning external JHU and professors here. And then for the student grant, it's undergraduate, master students, graduate students, and PhD students as well. Next slide, please, Julian. And for project eligibility, here we are ensuring that for researchers, it's a seed or pilot project. So, I mean, the sum of money, it's not as comparable as other grants, but it can be used to fund other parts of your research, and it's ideally to result in faculty publications. And for instructor grants, it is for new or existing courses, along with the one-time or recurring project. And then for student grants, it can be for a capstone, practicum, or independent study, or a faculty, but it cannot be for a course. I just want to make that clear. It can't be for course credit or to finish or complete a course. But if your program does entail having a practicum, capstone, maybe even an internship, then you could definitely use this grant to cover that. And faculty or postdoc is required. And eligible school and divisions, you can see below, here is our list. We try to be inclusive of all the campuses within the US. Just give you guys a moment. Oh, never mind. Yep. So for the grant timeline, we have the expressions of interest are due April 10th. And as Ben mentioned, they are on a rolling basis, and I'll get into detail about that in a little bit. But we do recommend that you submit them as early as possible. And on May 31st, that is when the final grant application is due, and that will be submitted via InfoReady. And these links can be found on the website. I will send a link in 2 seconds to our website where you can find both of those links. And then we will be announcing the awards on August 9th, so in the summer. Next slide, please. I see a bunch of questions coming in. That's great, but if you could just try to, save those and put those in the Q&A, that would be great as well. So for the expression of interest, as mentioned before, it's a rolling basis application until April 10th, and it is for matchmaking purposes here. And we are asking that you please submit we're asking what your position is and your project overview, but within 200 words or less, the key objectives that are expected and the outcomes, and how the project aligns with the draft. Additionally, we are asking for project partners, any that you have in mind at the moment, like administrative partners or faculties. However, if you don't have any, that is completely okay. That is where this comes into play, where you state is currently seeking assistance for the matchmaking purposes. And we will then aid you in finding staff or faculty advisors. And that's why we keep insisting to just get those in as soon as possible so we can assist you. Next slide. Awesome. I'll hand it off to Thunby.
Great. Thank you, Stacy. And thank you again, Julian and Ben, for your leadership in the sustainability plan formation and helping to guide and shape this program and for speaking on this webinar today. Thank you all for attending. I'll first go into our application guidelines. Oh, and as Stacy mentioned, I'm the program manager overseeing and helping to coordinate this program. Stacy is a full-time fellow devoted to this program and helping with developing all of the logistics of the grant administration. So if you reach out to the sustainability email about this program, you'll probably get directed to one of us. So after submitting the expression of interest by April 10th, we encourage all applicants to reach out to their partners and confirm with their partners about their project. The components of the application guidelines can be found on our website. We have a page devoted purely to the grants, and we have the full list of all the application prompts, but the main sections of that application include a description of your proposed project and how that proposed project would utilize the university, how it would test or evaluate innovative sustainability solutions, and how it would support the goals outlined in the draft JHU Climate Action and Sustainability Plan. And again, that draft plan can be found on the sustainability website, and we'll be sending out relevant links and these slides to everyone attending today after today's event. In addition to the overall project description, we do ask that there is a JHU administrative partner that might be a staff member in administration or facilities or operations who will approve that project ahead of submitting your grant application and provide institutional access to ensure that you can conduct your proposed project on campus with all relevant access that you would need. In terms of outcomes, we ask that grant applicants identify what potential deliverables would be for that project. Ideally, maybe considering how those outcomes might affect the sustainability plan goals, and to identify metrics for how those deliverables would be measured. And then we also will be asking for a timeline of what are the key overarching steps to completing the project within a 12-month period. These are on an annual cycle along the fiscal year. So we do ask that projects are completed within 12 months. And then finally, a budget table that includes justifications for each of the budgetary items. Regarding the budget, the funding for this program was secured through our Sustainability Leadership Council from the President's Office. And we've been engaging in dialogues with our team. So the Office of Sustainability is administering the grants through our department, which is Facilities and Real Estate. And we've been in contact with Central University Administration to really iron out what are the allowed and permitted expenses. We haven't gotten conclusive directions on some of those details, but we will be ensuring that we have those answers to share with everyone around some of the specifics around funding by the end of the month. In terms of forming partnerships, so a big part of this program and the projects that will be taking place is identifying new partners, partners both within the research world and across research and operations. And we really want to play a supporting role in ensuring that you all can really flesh out fully formed projects. So if you are completing your expression of interest, we ask that you let us know who the project partners are that you've identified, and we can respond and provide advice in terms of any people that or individuals or groups or roles that might be good to consult with before submitting your final project proposal. But we ask that you do some of that investigation on your own. You use the resources that we share with you to identify who potential partners might be. And then we can also step in and play a supporting role in helping with matchmaking and helping make suggestions of people to reach out to and consult with about your projects. So one form of partnership is our operational administrative staff at the university. Again, we can help advise on who those individuals are if you do have trouble identifying them. And then faculty advisors. For each student-led project, there does need to be either a faculty or postdoc advisor. And if you're a student who's having trouble identifying one, we have a general sense of a lot of researchers involved in sustainability and what their areas of research interests and expertise are, and we can play a supporting role in that as well. So either when you're submitting your expression of interest form, you can put those inquiries and suggestions there, and we will get back to everyone on a rolling basis. But if you'd like additional support, you can also contact the sustainability email address here at the top. And we'll be sending all these resources again over email following this webinar. So again, we haven't gotten conclusive answers around some of these budgetary guidelines, but in general, we can assure that grants can be used to support the implementation of projects as long as it relates to the scope of work of that project. Some examples might include transportation, equipment, and consumables, things needed to conduct a project like glassware, chemicals, clinical supplies, data processing supplies, that sort of thing. We do ask for some reporting to help us keep track of this program. This is the first year that we're offering these grants. This is our inaugural year, and we want to check in midway just to hear how projects are going and to stay up to date. And we ask that grant applicants who receive funding do share back outcomes as well as challenges and feedback on the program. And we want to be there kind of along the way to help navigate with challenges and better understand how the program can better support projects of this nature. So we definitely want to keep that open line of communication going throughout the year. And then we have our final progress report at the end of the 12-month grant cycle, where we're looking for those who receive grant funding to share back those outcomes and those metrics, both so we can track the success of this program, but also so we can share those success stories out broadly to the campus community and inspire more of this type of collaboration and this type of work to be taking place across, bridging our academics and research and our operations. We'd love to hear about those stories of partnerships and collaboration, the impacts that projects have had on sustainability on campus and the field of sustainability findings and discovery more broadly and globally, how project findings have been disseminated. We would love to support with the dissemination of findings to relevant campus sustainability networks that we're part of nationally and internationally so others can benefit from these findings. And we encourage researchers to share their findings with their own networks as well. And any recommendations that researchers have based off of that research that can be used to help inform and shape the implementation of sustainability goals on campus. We want to make sure that the research that's being conducted finds its way to the relevant people so that those findings and recommendations can be put into place and implemented wherever possible. And of course, we're happy to help with facilitating with some of that as well. For those who do receive grant funding, we do have a few requests of grantees. One is that we ask that those who do receive grant funding consider serving the following year as a grant reviewer in the next grant cycle to help with the selection process and serve on that grant review and selection committee. We do have our annual symposium on sustainability research and practice, and we would love to see those who conduct these types of projects to present their work to the campus community through that event. And along the way, we would love to have researchers capture photos and outcomes of their projects. And we do plan to feature those projects on the Campus as a Living Lab program website and to use those materials for storytelling, articles and feature stories and other forms of storytelling through the Office of Sustainability and Sustainability Leadership Council's communication channels and forums. So we'd love to kind of make sure that we're conducting interviews, stories, articles, have photos, and to collaborate with grantees to ensure that we're sharing those successes as broadly as possible. We wanted to provide some examples of research and teaching that has a campus-based component to it to hopefully inspire you all as you consider projects of your own. So some examples we'd love to highlight include Rose Weeks, who is a PhD candidate in the School of Public Health, who's focusing her dissertation on Johns Hopkins air travel emissions and conducting a series of interviews and research on how other universities are addressing their air travel emissions and strategies that the university can take into consideration to reduce the emissions and public health impacts on of air travel that the university is affiliated with. Another example is Kellogg Schwab, who was instrumental to the development of this program, who's partnered with the School of Public Health Facilities team to ensure clean water through helping use his research expertise and his team's research expertise to conduct monitoring throughout buildings, both at the Homewood campus and the School of Public Health campus. And then Julia Wolfson is associated with the university's School of Public Health, has a Center for a Livable Future, which focuses on the intersection of agriculture, sustainability, and health. And they're conducting a project in partnership with Hopkins Dining and campus dining halls, where they've started installing very recently climate labeling at the points of service where students are making their selections and what food they're choosing to take. And there's labels that indicate the climate impacts of those foods. And they're going to be monitoring to see if these labels impact students' behaviors and choices in dining halls. So they're using the dining halls as their living laboratory. And then finally, Kathy Slivakis and Earth and Planetary Sciences, and several of her courses take students outdoors to conduct field science research right on campus, where they're testing the soils and then they're looking at the worms in the soil and really getting that experiential hands-on learning right on campus and learning about the natural environment right outside their doorsteps. And then finally, we wanted to briefly encourage everyone here to consider attending our Sustainability Symposium. This is our 5th annual symposium on sustainability research and practice, organized by the Sustainability Leadership Council, and really look at this event as an opportunity to forge relationships, to get a better understanding of the research and practice conducted across Hopkins, and attend panel discussions to start to explore partnerships for collaborative projects that can take place on our campuses. So briefly, these are an overview. Oh, sorry. Some of the topics that will be covered at the symposium include transportation, climate resilience, education, environmental justice, land justice, food, energy, health, and a variety of topics. We hope to see you all there. And then finally, I'd love to take some time to see all the questions that people have been sharing in the chat and see if we can't help with responding to some of those. Okay, so I see one question here that's asking, is it mandatory for all teams to submit their expression of interest form in April? So again, the deadline was April 10th. And will selected teams from the submitted expression of interest be invited to submit the main application, or may all teams still provide their full application in May? So the process that we are recommending for everyone is that all applicants submit an expression of interest by the deadline of April 10th. They will receive feedback from our team regarding how a proposed research project can be adapted to meet the criteria to qualify for grants, and then kind of flesh out their project proposal by May 31st. So we're not going to reject anyone after the expression of interest to let them know that they can or cannot proceed with submitting a full application. But we do ask that everyone who's planning to submit a full grant application by that May 31st deadline first complete that expression of interest form. I see another question. Which semesters can courses be run, spring and fall? Yeah, courses can be run at any time. And we are looking into whether we'll be able to allow an extension that overlaps with going beyond the fiscal year to allow for courses to take place the following fall, since grants would be administered at the beginning of August. Another person asked, who are the grant reviewers for the first cycle? So we plan to have a grant review committee that consists of staff from the Campuses Living Lab program, one faculty member who will be reviewing each grant application, and a student who will be reviewing each grant application according to the criteria that was reviewed in the slideshow, and also is fully listed out on our grant website. And those grant reviewers are pulled from our advisory group, from our Sustainability Leadership Council, who have been involved in the development of this program. Another question here is, can we leverage our existing relationships with communities such as community gardens and community neighborhood groups and projects? So the intent of this program is focused within the boundaries of JHU campuses. So that can be any campus, that can be East Baltimore, Homewood, DC, APL. However, currently the scope of the project is focused within our university campuses as opposed to beyond those borders. And we hope to offer programs in the future that do kind of look a little bit more outward, but the intent of this program is to look inward and look at how the university can be modeling and testing sustainability first and foremost within our own environments. Someone else is asking to preview what information will be needed to be provided in the actual grant application. So the grant application, there is a PDF that's linked to on our website that lists off the exact wording of all of the prompts on the application form. But if you would like to look at the application form itself, there's a link to it, which is it's housed on InfoReady. There's a link to that application form that is on our website as well. So after this webinar, we can share those links and make sure that you all have access of where to find all of these relevant links.
Then we have I've seen a lot of questions coming from staff who are here today, who are interested in how they can participate. And I think it's probably worth just mentioning to folks that, I mean, hey, I think I'm really glad to see we have staff here as well who are excited by the mission of the program. And you know, I think in future years, one of the things we're discussing is how we are going to do some of the matchmaking in advance to identify even like possible project areas or themes that you know, can sort of be predetermined in some areas. Not that that's, you know, a requirement, but I think more importantly, what I want to touch on is if you're a staff member here today and you're curious about how you can participate, there's, as Stacy said in the chat, nothing inhibiting you from reaching out to faculty or to researchers, you know, to initiate your idea and say, hey, we're thinking about doing something. We really need someone who brings an academic background to think about how we can really study this. And so I think, you know, the partnerships here can be multi-directional and aren't meant to be, you know, limiting in that way. So, you know, I won't be surprised if those types of relationships sort of develop naturally as the program operationalizes itself. And, you know, it's nice to see that that's a demographic we need to keep considering as we, you know, sort of launch the program this year.
Thanks, Julian. That's very helpful. Another question I received is, can one person or team apply for multiple grants? And yes, people can apply individually or in teams for grants, and people can apply for more than one grant. Another question we received is, are initiatives in the hospital eligible? So currently the scope of the program is for the university, and that does not include the Johns Hopkins Hospital System. School of Medicine, School of Nursing would be considered part of the university, but the hospital is not currently considered part of the university. Another question we received is APL staff who are researchers can apply for research proposals. And which column under the table would they fall under? So they would fall under the research category. So the three categories being student-led research, researcher-led research, which includes any type of faculty or postdoc. And then the final category being course instructors. That can include any nature of course instructor. So another specific question that kind of builds off of the question that Julian addressed for us, is someone's asking if the staff member can be the lead on the application, or does the researcher need to take the lead? So the primary principal investigator on the grant needs to be either a student, staff, or a student, a researcher, or course instructor under that eligibility table that we shared. So the staff members who would be administrative or operational staff, they would be partners on the project, but the main applicant would need to be someone who falls under those three categories. So the idea is to bridge those connections across both forms of the university. Another question is, can a proposal be submitted from one department only, or should it be a collaborative work between departments or APL? The applicant teams can either be from the same department or from multiple departments. We don't have constraints on that.
One thing we touched on a lot throughout the presentation, but that I think might be worth just reinforcing, is sort of our team's focus around the storytelling dimensions of the program, so that, you know, we're really working alongside award recipients to sort of share outcomes in a way that sparks the imagination of the Hopkins community and beyond, and that helps with relationship building. So this is something we're going to be focusing on a lot, is really trying to amplify the projects that occur, because we recognize at an institution as large and decentralized as Johns Hopkins is, that there are just countless people engaged in work of this type, who many of whom know each other and many of whom don't. And so this program really presents an opportunity for us to shine a spotlight on projects that can lead to the type of relationship building that, you know, whether it's a future Campuses Living Lab project, whether it's future research collaboration, whether it's a faculty student mentorship, there's countless opportunities, and all of this really helps, I think, strengthen just the network of individuals engaged in this space across our university, and really embody the type of leadership that, you know, we're looking to demonstrate as an institution in this space. So something we're excited about, you know, collaborating with you all on, and will be the focus, you know, of a lot of our work in the first year and beyond.
Ellie asked a question, would it be possible for faculties to include salary requests in the grant budget? That's currently on hold. We're waiting for university administration to just make those defined budget guidelines. So we don't have an exact answer for that just yet. And as soon as we do, we will also ensure to make sure to send all of that information out to those of you who attended today.
I think there's a recognition too within our team that although the core tracks for grants are intended to continue into the future, it's likely too that there's some areas where these will evolve. And I think the committee has kept an open mind around this, really wanting to launch the program this year as we finalize our plan as an institution. Recognizing just the amount of lead time that's required from announcing the program to giving grant awards. And at the same time, I hope for those of you that have constructive feedback around things you would like to see embodied in the program vision or awards in future years, feel empowered to share that feedback with us. This year is really meant to be an inaugural year for the program to learn and to build off its early successes and to understand the challenges as well. So, if you have constructive feedback around things that you'd like to see in terms of program shape in the future and funding opportunities, don't hesitate to share that, and we'll gladly discuss as a team. Then it looks like there's a new question in the chat around student participants.
Yeah, so I'm reading it now. If a student participant were to graduate in December of this year, would they still be able to participate in the grant program to complete the 12 months? So I think our current interpretation of the funding is, if you submit a proposed timeline that's shorter than 12 months, that's totally fine. If you want to expedite your project to take place in a shorter time frame, that should be fine. I do think that if someone were to graduate, they would no longer be qualified for the grant funding, however, so they would need to be a current and active student or researcher or instructor with Hopkins at the time that they're receiving the funds. In addition, any students who are conducting projects would need to have a department sponsor who would set up an account on their behalf to administer the funds through. So typically your academic department would be your sponsor for administrating those funds for your project. Okay, so I think we have gotten a number of questions. We'll be sure to write up these responses and circulate them to everyone following this event to make sure that everyone has access to the relevant information. And any questions that we didn't have answers to, we are certainly going to, as soon as possible, find those answers and be able to share those with you all. On our last slide, we just wanted to encourage everyone again to reach out to us through our sustainability email account, which is on the last slide, and to explore our webpage where we have an array of information, both about the program at large and these partnerships that we're encouraging, and then a specific page devoted to the grant application process and all of the eligibility information, the grant selection criteria, the grant application forms, and everything of that nature. Yes, and thank you all for attending today. And Julian said, thank you for spreading the word. But if you haven't already, please do help us spread the word, as this is our first year of offering this program. And we definitely would like to see all schools across the university take advantage of these opportunities. So if you could help us connect with your networks as well about these opportunities, whether it's the Campuses Lab program or the symposium or sustainability at large, we really would love everyone to share information widely and broadly.
And if there was if there are any of you who were hoping to be eligible for a funding track but are realizing there are limitations, please also know that in some cases, we work broadly with divisional partners across the institution, many of whom have their own budgets and interests. And so it's not, our vision for this program is beyond the granting portion. And as we build that over time, whether that's through internships, whether that's through sort of divisional funding streams or others, we have a very open mind around how we can sort of embody, I think, the vision of the program through a multitude of modalities. So we're happy to, again, be an asset to you all in matchmaking or just information gathering. If you're considering a grant, maybe this isn't the right year, maybe next year is, maybe you need to talk to people and really think about that. We're here to help with any of those things. Thanks again.